Pimp My Ride came about. I was getting my cars done at West Coast Customs, just like, Shaq was getting them. A bunch of people working with this one garage. My man Ryan, who owns the place.
For 6 seasons, he was the face of automotive excess. The man who turned beat-up cars into rolling entertainment centers, complete with things like cotton candy machines, champagne chillers, and even fish tanks. Xzibit became a household name through Pimp My Ride, transforming from respected rapper to MTV icon. But behind that signature smile and enthusiasm was a man harboring serious doubts about what the show was really doing to these cars and to the contestants who trusted them with their rides. Now, years after the camera stopped rolling, Xzibit is finally breaking his silence about the dark side of Pimp My Ride. The shocking revelations he's sharing paint a very different picture of the show that made him famous. From cars that barely functioned to modifications that were removed after filming, from safety concerns that were ignored to contestants who were left worse off than when they started, the truth about Pimp My Ride is far more disturbing than anyone imagined. The host who wasn't really in charge. One of the biggest misconceptions about Pimp My Ride was Xzibit's actual role in the process. While viewers saw him as the mastermind behind the wild modifications, the reality was far different. Xzibit has been candid about his limited involvement in the actual work being done on the vehicles. Look, people gotta understand, I was the host, alright? I wasn't in the garage with a blowtorch and a socket set. My job was to bring the energy, connect with the kids, and show off the final product, Xzibit explained in recent interviews. His role was primarily that of a presenter and hype man, not the automotive genius many fans believed him to be. The typical filming schedule had Xzibit arriving for specific segments: the initial meeting with contestants, periodic check-ins during the build process, and the dramatic reveal at the end. What happened between those moments was largely out of his hands and often out of his sight. I'd come in, film my segments, the intro, check in on the progress, and then the big reveal. What happened between those points? That was on the shop, man. I trusted them to do their thing, he admitted. This distance from the actual work meant that Xzibit was often as surprised as the contestants by some of the more outrageous modifications. Maybe I should have been more involved, asked more questions about the practical side, but hey, it was a TV show moving at 100 miles an hour, he reflected. This admission suggests that even Xzibit recognized, in hindsight, that the show's approach prioritized entertainment over functionality. The fake factor: when reality TV wasn't real. As Pimp My Ride gained popularity, the pressure to create dramatic television moments led to increasingly staged elements that Xzibit now acknowledges were misleading to viewers. The reality of reality TV was often carefully manufactured for maximum impact. One of the most significant fabrications involved contestant reactions. The genuine surprise and excitement that made for compelling television didn't always happen naturally, leading to multiple takes and coached responses. Okay, yeah, sometimes we had to do a few takes for the reactions. The kid comes out, they're a little quiet, and the producer's like, "We need more, bigger." So, you hype them up. It's television, you want that big moment, he admitted. These reshot reactions became some of the show's most memorable moments, but they weren't always authentic. The backstories of contestants were also sometimes embellished for dramatic effect. While the cars were genuinely in poor condition, the personal narratives were often enhanced to create more compelling television. They'd find a kid with a beat-up car, and maybe the story got a little more dramatic for the cameras. Everyone wants a good narrative, right? He revealed. This practice of enhancing reality for entertainment value was common in reality TV, but it contributed to unrealistic expectations about what the show could actually deliver. Even the famous surprise visits to contestants' homes were often coordinated in advance. The logistics of bringing a full camera crew and production team to someone's house required significant planning that contradicted the spontaneous image the show projected. The surprise, I'm at your house thing? Yeah, there was some coordination. You can't just roll up with a camera crew unannounced all the time. Logistics people, he explained. The ridiculous modifications, style over substance. The impractical and often absurd modifications became the show's trademark. While these wild additions made for great television, Xzibit now acknowledges that many were purely for visual spectacle and weren't meant to function long-term. Some of that stuff they put in the cars, man, it was purely for TV. A cotton candy machine in the trunk? A chocolate fountain? Who's driving around with that daily? They were show cars, not daily drivers, he revealed. This admission confirms what many suspected, that the modifications were designed for the cameras, not for practical use. The infamous fish tanks that appeared in several episodes were particularly problematic. Beyond the obvious maintenance issues, they posed safety risks and were often removed shortly after filming. Pop-up screens and elaborate speaker systems frequently broke due to the complexity of their installation and the quality of the components used. I remember seeing some mods and thinking, that looks cool, but how is that going to work? But hey, it made for great TV. Sometimes things were put in for the wow factor and then, well, maybe they weren't meant to last forever or were taken out if they weren't safe or practical, he admitted. This approach created a fundamental disconnect between what viewers saw and what contestants actually received. The cars looked amazing for the reveal, but many of the most impressive features were either non-functional or removed shortly after filming. Could anyone really expect a champagne chiller or robotic arm to function reliably in a daily driver? The answer, as he now acknowledges, was obviously no, but the show's format didn't allow for such practical considerations. The mechanical reality, pretty cars, broken dreams. One of Xzibit's most honest admissions concerns the show's approach to the fundamental mechanical issues that plagued many of the featured vehicles. While the cosmetic transformations were dramatic, the underlying problems that made these cars unreliable in the first place were often left unaddressed. People would hit me up years later, "Yo X, my Pimp My Ride car broke down." And I'm like, dude, that was a decade ago, and the car was probably a clunker to begin with, Xzibit explained. This response, while somewhat defensive, acknowledges the reality that many contestants faced after the cameras stopped rolling. The show's budget and time constraints were primarily allocated to the visual modifications that would look impressive on television. Engine rebuilds, transmission repairs, and other mechanical work that would actually improve the car's reliability were often secondary considerations. We weren't doing full engine rebuilds on every car. The budget and time was mostly for the pimping, the paint, the rims, the sound system. If the engine was shot, it was often still shot after, just looked cooler, he admitted. This honest assessment reveals the fundamental flaw in the show's approach. Some vehicles were in such poor condition that they probably should have been scrapped rather than modified. But the show's format required transformation, regardless of whether it made practical sense. Some of those cars, honestly, should have just gone to the junkyard. But the show was about giving a kid a dream, even if just for that one reveal moment, he reflected. This admission is perhaps his most telling, acknowledging that the show prioritized the television moment over the long-term benefit to contestants. Former contestants have shared stories that confirm his admissions. Many reported that modifications were removed for safety reasons, that cars still had mechanical problems, and that the elaborate additions often broke down quickly. I heard some stories later, yeah. Kids saying stuff broke or wasn't practical. It's tough, because you want everyone to have a great experience. But the reality of taking a $500 car and trying to make it a spaceship on a TV budget and schedule, something's got to give.